Come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 297. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So in this episode here for you is going to be my Voyage to the Fives, number 13 of doing these. So the two featured reviews here, I finally got to check out Bring Her Back. This is on VOD now, so the moment I saw that it was available, I jumped on that. So that'll be a featured review that I'm going to be pairing up with The Mystery of Edwin, Drood. So this one actually has familial issues with people disappearing, losing people, and kind of coming to terms with things and trying to figure out what is truly going on here. So then for mini reviews here, I'm an idiot, and I thought it was released in 1995. That's what it has on Letterboxd, but I see Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation is actually a 1994 film, so I still went ahead and watched that one, and that'll be a first mini review. And then I got to check out a screener of Ketchup on Waffles. I get into a little bit more interesting stuff when I talk about that over there, but my Voyage to the Fives rewatch for 1995 is going to be Tales from the Hood, and then I gave a watch to a screener of Eye for an Eye. Got to go to the Wexner Center for the Arts to see Black Sunday, that classic film, and then I also gave a rewatch to a 2025 release of Control Freak, and also have 2 episodes of Horror's Greatest for you on here. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here on this intro except saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
I have a great thing here that I wanted to go ahead and give you an offer for since it fell into my lap and wanted to go ahead and share it with you. I have been given a promo code here for shimmerwoodbeverages.com. These are CBD infused seltzers that are award winning. They have been twice recognized by Forbes as the #1 CBD beverage in the United States and the best lower potency option out there. It blends full spectrum CBD with local Maine fruits and cocktail bitters for bold flavors, crafted without added sugars, caffeine, or artificial ingredients, which if you know me, that is something that I prefer because I get enough of the caffeine and I'm trying to get away from sugars. So it's designed for relaxation without intoxicating effects, perfect straight from the can or a refreshing cocktail or mocktail base, depending on what you're looking for there. This has unique flavors like raz lime, chai cherry, ginger orange, and just hemp. Now, Simmerwood offers a health-conscious alternative to sugary sodas or alcohol, made to revive a calm, clear focus for natural stress relief. Each can contains 5 milligrams of full-spectrum CBD for a balancing, calming effect. So this one here is at, like I said, shimmerwood.com, and my promo code here for you listeners is actually you get 30% off of if you use my code, and this is, like I said, a great deal if you can go ahead and you want to do that, and my code is going to be Cinephile1. So if you want to check out more of the information or check out their site, there will be links in the show notes for you to check that out there. And for my first mini review here is going to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. This actually had another original title. It was The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was originally thinking this was from 1995 without actually double checking it. This is from 1994, so I did a foray through the fours for, just because. But then this is directed by Kim Hinkle, who also wrote this, and then he's getting credit along with Tobe Hooper for the characters created because he did work on the original TCM. Now this stars Renee Zellweger, Matthew McConaughey, and Robert Jacks. This is a B-horror, dark comedy, satire, slasher, thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 3.4 on IMDb and a 1.9 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being. A group of teenagers get in a car crash in the Texas woods on prom night and then wander into an old farmhouse that is home to Leatherface and the insane family of cannibalistic psychopaths. So this one actually has Robert Jacks portraying that titular character of Leatherface that they were just talking about. And I remember when this first hit the movie channels. My mother showed me the original with my sister, I believe, and then I know her and I sought out some of the sequels. Then from there, I gathered from the opening text, this acknowledges the events of Part 2 as well as Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which I do actually think is Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. But they seem to be somewhat unrelated, though, from what the opening text was. So I gave this another watch here as a critical eye for Right Through the Fours. I believe this was actually in the Summer Challenge series as well. So that was the last time I watched it ahead of this. So I remember the first time watching this not understanding it. It didn't land with me as well. And something to include is I still didn't even... it's weird. I don't completely hate this movie. I think there's some interesting things they're trying to do here, but let's kind of jump into that. But I was going to say, before watching it for the Summer Challenge, I know I picked this up on DVD in college, and that was the last time I had watched it ahead of doing it over there. So I didn't realize how much of this was a requel until these last couple watches. It follows most of the same plot points of the original. We have a variation on a manic dinner scene, and in this one we have Jenny, who is Zellweger. She escapes multiple times, and one of which through the window, which is very similar to what Marilyn Burns did in the classic. On top of that, we have the scene where Leatherface, chases her in the daylight with cars coming and her trying to get in one and leave. They even use the opening chase sequence from Part 2 in this one. We get the iconic chainsaw dance scene at the end. This doesn't ruin the film by any stretch. It just feels like Hinkle, who, like I said, was a writer-director here, wanted to kind of almost do what Hooper did in this one. Along with Hooper, thinking that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a comedy, Hinkle leans way too far into doing that here. Now, the problem that I don't really know if it knows what it wants to do with these elements. I appreciate keeping the continuity by acknowledging the events that have happened previously. This is a whole new family from Leatherface, but that's what we've gotten since Part 2. If this was supposed to be the children of the people in the original movie, they would, we never saw children there, and there were no women around, so where did these kids come from? There's also this odd aspect of the government knowing what they're doing and not stopping it, because this is an element that comes in with the character of Mr. Rothman, portrayed by James Gell. I do kind of chuckle here because Matthew McConaughey's Vilmer character, his tow truck is the Illuminati towing on the side of it, and then this woman that he's hanging out with of Darla, who is Tony Perensky, how she talks about the secret group, and then, like I said, Rothman shows up later. I just don't think it adds anything outside of just making it even more wild. Now, there is something to include here. This takes a meta approach to horror. It is different than we normally see, but there's this angle with the Illuminati is all about control. That part makes sense. By having these people being terrifying and they're isolated like they are, it keeps people away. It also gives something to be scared of instead of the government. This is weak with the execution, but the concept is still there. Now, there are other things here that don't necessarily work either. The odd robotic leg for Vilmer doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think it just kind of adds unnecessary comedy and makes it more slapstick. Now, there is one thing that they use it for a kill that I did like that. I'll credit that for sure. To go from there, I don't like how they overtly make Leatherface into a transvestite. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't have an issue with that. It's just they make the character that used to be menacing. Now he just has the size, but in this one he just kind of screams a lot and doesn't really do anything. So there isn't much to the story. Let's then shift over to discuss the actor performances. Zellweger is fine in her role. She's not something I'm necessarily a fan of, but I think she's actually pretty solid here. I do like the depth they had here that she has body image issues that stem from her mother's boyfriend. Now she is smart and bookwormish as well to kind of go along with that. And she does show good fear, and I like her character growth. The best performance by far, though, is McConaughey. He overacts, but I like it. He goes for it, and he's just insane. Now, Jax plays Leatherface over the top as well. That didn't necessarily work for me. I did like that we also have here Joe Stevens, who is W.E. He just recites these like weird quotes, and I'm not even necessarily sure if he's attributing the right people to it. I'd also say that Lisa Marie Newmeyer was solid. Now, Sean is Jenny's boyfriend in this one. He's portrayed by John Harrison, and then we also have Barry, who is Heather's boyfriend. Now, he's a misogynist and kind of a jerk. He's just there. He's somebody that I can't wait to see get killed in this movie, but he is Tyler Shea Cohn. I'd say the rest of the cast rounded off for what was needed. We also have a cameo by Burns that is uncredited, and that was solid. Let's then finish out with filmmaking. My biggest issue here is that this is boring. The deaths are off screen. I'm not sure this was due to not having the budget or not being able to make it look good. This could be effectively done, which they do in the original, but it falls short here since we're just lacking other spots. The setting feels like the original. It isn't as grimy, but it's not horribly off. The cinematography and framing were fine as well, outside of the issue with the kills. What the effects we do see are limited. The soundtrack also didn't necessarily stand out either. So in conclusion, this one struggles to find its footing for me. And it's marred by a confused narrative, uneven execution, and a lack of genuine menace from its iconic villain. While it attempts to integrate meta commentary and acknowledge previous events, the results largely are just forgettable. This film is primarily recommended for completionists of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, who, if you want to see every entry, or as a background film, as this one you could put on with parties just because of how wild it is, because you don't necessarily need to pay full attention either. So then my rating here for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 10 after this most recent watch. And the next up is going to be a little bit of a special one here, and I'll kind of get into why, but this one's going to be called Ketchup on Waffles. This is, I guess this is being credited here as 2024. It hasn't gotten its wide release as of yet. I know it's doing some festival stuff, but this was written and directed by John Thiessen Jr. It stars Ian O'Boyle, Teresa Moreno, and Rob Rappa. This is a dark comedy crime horror film that is from the United States. Now, there's not enough for an average yet on IMDb, and the same over on Letterboxd, but I would say over there it's about a 4-star movie, with our synopsis being 3 masked men terrorize a college town diner late on a Friday night. Their leader orchestrates increasingly brutal murders of the customers for fun over the next several hours. So this is a film that was brought to my attention by Aaron over at the A&B Horror. So shout out to you, man. This one, he brought to the Dreadcast, to which we're both contributors. Now, he had an interview lined up with the writer and director of Thiessen, and then asked if I'd be interested in joining. And I did. This was a great time that I had talking with all of them. And the lead actor here, as well as O'Boyle, he joined us as well. So I'm going to be sharing limited information, as this is hopefully getting a wide release here later this year. I know when I last talked to him, he's still in the works on that, so let's just kind of delve into a little bit here. And what I will say is that this is an intense film. It sets the stage by showing us that it's part found footage. The guy in the blue mask is carrying the camera. He's portrayed by Rappa. And then he also seems to be better friends with the guy in the white mask, who's O'Boyle. Now, Red Mask is somebody that they have recently met, or he recently joined them. That's Max Onlu. I think that might be how you say name. If I do mispronounce that, I do apologize. So, Red, though, gets under the skin of the white. Now, it feels like they're with aggressors and the victims here, but this idea I'll come back to is by saying that this feels like a combination of Man Bites Dog, Funny Games, and Trash Humpers, which is actually kind of funny because during the interview, Funny Games is something that was definitely an inspiration. Now that I set that up, let's start with the filmmaking techniques here. We get a combination that I like, which I said with the blue filming with the camera, bringing back shades of like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer to watch later, and then, being filmed for a more conventional style outside of that. Even this latter has a sway to it, so it's almost like we're watching things happen and not stopping it, or maybe we are a fourth person that's actually helping them as well. We don't necessarily know. It adds an intimacy to the events that we watch. We're seeing it from a point of view of a masked men as well as their victims. That's the idea that the victims banded together from the start. They could put an end to this. Instead, people sit idly by, hoping that they're not targeted. This in turn doesn't make them exempt from being next. The filming style works here well. Then sticking with this, the attacks aren't necessarily on the screen. This is a credit to the framing. This is one where something happens behind Batwing doors. We hear a guy screaming, and then the aftermath. It made me cringe, though, knowing what was being done. This is all practically done effects from everything that I figured out. This is strategic in how they're shown, which adds realism. They're also quick cuts to allow our brain to fill in what we're not seeing. And then the sound design adds to building this atmosphere. I also dug the opening song as well, and one that we got later in the movie. It just adds a vibe that made my anxiety, build to the attacks. Now, let's then shift over to the story. We have, what it's limited here is more of a character study. This is interesting that we never truly learned much about the masked men. There is this interesting scene here with the white removes his covering to talk to Abby, who is Moreno, and she is on a date actually at the very beginning of this movie with Ryan, who's played by Hector Rivera. So this all kind of makes sense, is that he's trying to connect with her. We saw him earlier in the night, and it's almost like he is now revealing to her that he's the one been behind this on purpose. Title of the film comes back into play here. And there's actually this great little thing here that's supposed to be like a Reddit comment about psychopaths or monsters are the ones that put ketchup on waffles. So I'm not really sure if the white is insane. From the things he said, he has lost grip on reality at least. It seems to be this idea of somebody who might have been intelligent at the high school level, but didn't necessarily go to college. It's not absolutes to there being like, college area, causing him to lash out at the students. And I almost get the idea that he might think that it's almost like the societal thing where because people going to college are considered to be smarter, he doesn't necessarily like that. So there's a lot of conjecture. So credit the movie to sparking consideration and allowing me to bring what I think and pull from what I can from the movie. So once again, I've already said this to them, but still want to make sure I said it on this angle here. Now, since this is more of a character study, let's discuss the acting performance. Old Boyle is such a menace. He is terrifying without going over the top. And then he blows up at Red he also blows up at the victims as well, and it's just kind of terrifying out of nowhere, which is kind of funny because having interviewed and talked to him, he's actually one of the nicest guys I've ever met. So it's so great his acting performance that he can just turn it on like he does here. Also credit here to Moreno and Rivera as our leads. She is given more to develop her character, but I do like that a lot of this is improv, so they're allowed to build what they could and give it their own personality. I also want to give her most credit for how broken she is at the climax. It is sad, but well done, and it just made me feel empty, and, credit to the movie for making me feel something. Then I also want to say Rappa and Unlu are solid as the White's helpers. Credit as well to Thiessen, who takes on a couple of smaller roles here for what's needed. The other victims that died are solid as well. Again, they're allowed to bring what they could to the character. They're believable, and that's all you really need. So in conclusion, this is an intense and disturbing character study that excels in its filmmaking techniques, particularly its unsettling blend of found footage and conventional film cinematography. While the narrative is sparse, the film's strength lies in its exploration of the mass attackers and the harrowing psychological and physical torment inflicted upon their victims. O'Boyle delivers a chilling performance as White, supported by solid portrayals from Moreno and Rivera. This film is undoubtedly resonant with fans of extreme horror, drawing comparisons to titles from me like Man Bites Dog and Funny Games. However, due to its graphic and unsettling nature, it's not one that I can recommend to every viewer, but if you want to take the chance on this one, it doesn't show as much on screen as it's more allowing the viewer to kind of explore some of this stuff and kind of take what you can from it as well. So this one, I definitely want to rewatch again. My initial rating is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. But like I said, this is one I want to revisit before the end of the year because I definitely think it's going to go up for me. So, like I said, keep an eye out for this one. That when it hits streaming, I would highly recommend it if you can handle this type of stuff. And then for my next mini review here is actually going to be my true one that is a Voyage to the Fives. That's going to be Tales from the Hood from 1995. This is directed by Rusty Cundiff. Now, he also wrote this with Darren Scott. This features Clarence Williams III, Corbin Burnson, and Joe Torre. This is a body horror, dark comedy, gangster, psychological drama, supernatural horror film that is also got zombie, crime, and drama, if I didn't say that already. This is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb and a 3.7 on Letterboxd, with a synopsis being: a funeral director tells 4 strange tales of horror with an African-American focus to 3 drug dealers he traps in his place of business. So this is one that I used to watch a lot growing up. For whatever reason, my dad showed my sister and I when we were kids, when it first hit the movie channels. I think that's how it was. Or maybe he had rented it. So we all loved it. It was one that we would always be on the movie channel, so it was in regular rotation. So I did rewatch this for the Summer Challenge series when I was on the People's Council, and now I'm giving it a rewatch here as a Voyage to the Five since I've never actually covered it on the podcast. So I'll just kind of give a little bit of information here. The wraparound story is of 3 gangsters. There is Stack, portrayed by Torrey, and he goes there with Ball, portrayed by Duandre Bonds, and Bulldog by Samuel Monroe Jr., and they meet Mr. Sims, who is Williams. He runs this funeral home, this mortuary, and they're here to buy drugs. So then the first story is actually 2 police officers of Strom, portrayed by Wings Hauser, and Billy by Dwayne Whitaker, are beating up a politician of Martin Morehouse, portrayed by Tom Wright. And then Newton, who is portrayed by Michael Massey, and Clarence by Anthony Griffin show up, and they end up beating this guy pretty much to death. And then he ends up tormenting Clarence, and some things kind of happen here as this entity gets its revenge. And then so what I'll say here is that this story is quite relevant. We have police officers who are committing acts of violence. There's quite a bit of outrage, and it always seems to be in the news. This is interesting that Martin is a zombie-like thing, but it has attributes more like a demon. This feels like an EC Tales from the Crypt style story, and it gets this film off right. Then the second one is actually about a bullied boy named Walter, portrayed by Brandon Hammond, who has a run-in with a bully, and his teacher of Richard, portrayed by Cundiff, notices bruises. He reaches out to the mother, who is Sissy, portrayed by Paula Jai Parker, and we actually see that there could be, well, the reason there is that Walter believes there's a monster that is doing this to him, so Richard wants to get to the bottom of this, and he finds out what this really means, and it also features a character named Carl by David Alan Grier. So this story actually hits me more that I'm an adult, and especially now that I have children, because there's dealing with like child abuse here. I feel horrible for Walter, and seeing him cry in bed really hurts, and seeing just the terror that he has. This is, much like the first tale, definitely has a twist that still is relevant today. I also like the revenge and how everything kind of plays out there as well. So that one, I've said, it also kind of falls in line with the type of stories they're going for. Then the next one is a man running for public office, and it's Duke Metger, portrayed by Bernson. He's a known racist and a former KKK member. So he's taken on this plantation home where slaves were kept and killed. And he has this guy who's trying to fix his image of Rhodey, portrayed by Roger Governor Smith. Now, there's this local legend about this woman who did voodoo to put dead slaves' souls into these dolls, and they're there to get revenge. There's another one, kind of relevant to modern times. There's a large enough subsection of the population that follow racist beliefs of fringe groups and politicians that refuse to denounce them. Living in times like we are, I can see somebody like Duke getting elected and doing so with ease. I used to think that this was extreme, especially since he's a former member. It isn't too far out of the realm. It's just crazy that in 1995, these issues are still popping up here today. So this was my favorite growing up with how creepy the dolls are. They do some stop motion there that still holds up. Love how this plays out, falling in line with the other stories. And then the final one actually is going to be a gangbanger of Crazy K, portrayed by Lamont Bentley. He chases down a guy, guns him down, but then in retaliation, 3 of his friends kill him. And he's given an option here, very Clockwork Orange style, where Dr. Cushing, portrayed by Rosalind Cash, thinks of a new method to try to save him. So this one actually has the best twist of any of the stories. Didn't see it coming that first time. I do like the duality here is that the cell that he's in next to, there's this neo-Nazi, and he actually wants Crazy K to join his thing because once once this war of this happens, that they're going to have a select few black people are going to become slaves again. So seeing how similar this guy is because he's mostly killing members of his own race. So, like I said, Clockwork Orange definitely influences this one. This was my least favorite growing up, but it has such a powerful impact, and it's critically looking at things with this music video montage that it features. So like I kind of say here is I'm going to treat these all as one since we do have the same kind of team behind it. I never get bored here. This one still holds up and it's just kind of very relevant with the social commentary. Let's go over the acting here. Williams is great as Mr. Sims. He's great as this eccentric old man and I love it, but there's more to it. The 3 gangbangers fear the place and they get sucked into each story like we are, so credit there. So that's Tory, Bonds, and Monroe. This does portray white people to be bad, which is fine. All of them are kind of horrible looks at as the white race. We have Hauser, Whitaker, Massey, and Bernson kind of leading the way there. Also that neo-Nazi. The portrayal of all these were good. It's interesting to see Grier in a role like he has here because I'm used to him being more in comedic stuff. I also thought that Cash was solid. I've actually remember seeing her in something when she was younger, so seeing her here as Dr. Cushing is fun. The acting is just great across the board. Also thought to be filmmaking. The cinematography here is great, along with the framing, the setup of the mortuary, and this weird place where they keep Crazy K as the standouts. We get some good effects to help hide the seams with the cinematography as well. Now for the air, you'd think there'd be more CGI, but they don't. We get everything seems to be mostly practical. Special credit to the melting scene in the first story and the stop motion for the dolls in that third one. And I like even where it ends up with the wraparound. There is limited blood and gore that we get, but it looks real enough. Soundtrack and music were good. Special credit to the violin in the third story once again there, because that just really kind of amps up that tension and the eeriness. Also, the montage scene they have a perfect song there. Aside of that, the sound design helped to build the atmosphere needed. In conclusion, this is a powerful and relevant anthology film that effectively blends horror with social commentary. The film's 4 distinct tales, woven together by an engaging wraparound story, explores themes of police brutality, child abuse, racism, and gang violence, all of which remain shockingly pertinent today, despite the film's 1995 release. With strong performances from a talented cast, excellent pacing, impressive practical effects, and a compelling soundtrack, I highly recommend its enduring impact and thrilling narrative. So my rating here for Tales from the Hood going to be a 9.5 out of 10. I've actually come up half a point from the last time I watched it. And then up next, I have a screener I got to check out of Eye for an Eye from 2025, directed by Colin Tilley. This is written by Elisa Victoria and Michael Tully. This stars S. Empatha Murkinson, Whitney Peaks, and Finn Bennett. This is a horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.6 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say between like a 3 and a 3.5 star movie over there, with our synopsis being follows the story of Anna, who grieves the death of her parents as she moves from New York to Florida to stay with her grandmother. She falls in with some other teens, but when she sees a grisly act of violence, she finds herself trapped. So this is one I got the chance to see via screener thanks to Emma from Fusion Entertainment. Seeing that this was an independent 2025 film, I like to check out movies like this to help round out my end-of-year list. The title obviously comes from the old adage, so I kept that in mind. Outside of confirming that this was a 2025 release and in genre, I came into this one blind, no pun intended. And if I didn't say, Anna is portrayed by Peaks. So what I'm going to say here is that I find this to be some interesting mythology here. They're using the villain here of the Sandman, which obviously has been in songs and like folklore and stuff. Kind of interesting what they do here. He haunts his victims' dreams, turning them into terrifying nightmares. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of dream sequences, as I think it's something that's a cheap way to get scares, and it can be overused. I am forgiving, though, since the entity's history is directly in the lore. There are things here that I had bigger issues with. Now that I have it set up, let me delve deeper into what I did like. The film has a poignant look at bullying. It is interesting with how it is played out here, since we're seeing one aspect be like generational trauma. So this would be May Roberts, who is the grandmother of Merkinson. Now, when she was younger, she was a popular girl in school, a cheerleader and everything, and then she ends up getting blinded by this entity. Now, this is actually in the opening, so it's not really a spoiler there. So it could be considered a freak accident. May is cold and mean, though. It is good to have a character like Patty, who I believe is her daughter, and this is Golda Rashuvel who plays that. I believe that's how I'm not fully sure there, but May is also set in her ways, and particularly about how things are done, and like Patty doesn't want to be around her. Merkinson was solid in bringing this role to life. It makes for tense situations where she is in her room, where Anna is like looking through the keyhole, or they're in the same room together where May can't see her and is trying to sense her. I liked utilizing that for the atmosphere. Then from there, I did want to shift over to the group of teens. Anna is an outsider, and there aren't many young people to hang out with. So she hangs out and meets Sean, who's portrayed by Bennett, and then there is Julie, portrayed by Laken Giles. Now, they aren't necessarily bad people. I do like the framing to make them great characters. Sean is a jerk, especially when he's been drinking. He is afraid of getting into trouble, so he just continues to double down as he actually hurts a young boy here of Connor, portrayed by Carson Minier. Now, Julie is complacent in the physical abuse that Sean is doing. She could do the right thing, but instead she sits idly by. Anna falls into this as well, just kind of going a little bit slightly farther with helping him to at least get to urgent care. There's a great scene as well where Connor carves this trio's name into this tree, and if your name's carved into it, we learn this is what makes the Sandman haunt you. We see what happens when Sean tries to do this for somebody who isn't a bully, and I love that the curse only allows those to be deserving punishment to be that way. Let's then shift over to talking about the entity directly. I'm not going to spoil things, but I do like the backstory about it. It's tragic and makes sense why it targets bullies. They actually kind of pull from the new Candyman movie with how they explain the backstory, or like Krampus. Thought it was fine. There are some interesting things that get watered down, like a version of Pumpkinhead, though. The problem there is that there are no stakes, so it loses tension. The look was fine. It did remind me a little bit of the Cankerman from Before I Wake. I like how it appears. It's in the background, which makes me uncomfortable. So credit the cinematography and framing. I love the idea of the title and what the Sandman does as it plays back in with the title. It does feel a little bit generic outside of that. Now, moving over then to discuss filmmaking, I do think that the cinematography and framing were good, as I said. The practical look of the creature was solid. I'll even credit Ben Balden, who does the body. Using a physical human was a good move. There is CGI. I am a bit more forgiving since a lot of it's used with the nightmares and dream logic. They do some creepy things with the effects. I also thought the sound design worked to help to build the atmosphere. The problem is that this ends up as a slow burn that struggled to hold my attention. All tough then to be acting performances. Since I haven't come out and stated it, I wanted to give credit to Peak. I thought she was good as our lead. She plays it stoically, but I can see that being the way because of trauma that she has happened with, parents weighing on her. She's not sleeping well, so she's tormented by this entity, and then I know when I get grumpy, and it really kind of weighs on me, so that all makes sense. Bennett is solid as his bully who gets his two friends into trouble. Giles is good as the other friend. She and Anna should stand up to Sean, but so they end up feeling guilty for allowing it to happen. Merkinson is good as his older woman who turned bitter for what happened to her. Rashuvel worked also in her role. Credit to Minier and the rest of the cast for rounding this off where was needed. So in conclusion, this delves into an interesting mythology surrounding the Sandman and offering a poignant look at bullying, generational trauma through its characters, while having strong performances, particularly from Peaks and Merkinson, as well as effective cinematography and sound design. The film ultimately suffers from a lack of stakes and a slow burn that struggles to maintain momentum. Feels like a watered-down version of similar concepts, leading to a largely generic haunting experience. Since this is specifically drawn to this subgenre, that's the people I would recommend it to. But, I think this is going to fall into obscurity, though, unfortunately. I hate to be kind of coming down like that. But for me, Eye for an Eye, I gave a 5.5 out of 10. And then up next for you, I got to go to the Wexner Center for the Arts to see Black Sunday. It goes by the original title of Massacre del Dominio. This is from 1960. It is directed by Mario Bava, the great Mario Bava, that is. And the screenplay was written by Ennio Di Concini and Mario Severandre. This comes from the tale by Nicolas Gogol. The English dialogue was done by George Higgins, and then some uncredited work here was done by Bava, Marcello Casillo, and Dino Di Palma. Now, this is a supernatural vampire witch horror film that is from Italy. It is also starring Barbara Steele, John Richardson, and Andre Cecchi. This is sitting on a 7.1 on IMDb and a 3.7 on Letterboxd, with the synopsis here being: just decades after being executed for witchcraft, vengeful princess Asia Vaja and her fiendish servant are resurrected and begin a bloody campaign to possess the body of Venge's beautiful look-alike descendant, Princess Katia. Should say that Aza and Katia are both portrayed by Steele there. So, for this one, if you'd like to hear a mini review, I covered this back on episode 53, which was Italian Horror number 4, that featured The Golden Glove and Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom. But for this one here, I've seen this one a handful of times now. And, the most recent one being in the theater. I didn't get the hype originally, but I totally do now that I'm more versed in cinema. So it kicks off with a genuinely guilty witch and her accomplice being executed, which was a cool twist on the typical witch hunt narratives. So there's a Vi connection here. If you're a horror fan and you dig the subtle nods to the Russian folktale of that name, it adds a cool layer here, with the Eastern European setting. So there's some Vaja family drama here. The ancestral curse storyline with Barbara Steele playing both the vengeful witch Aza and her descendant Katia is super effective and allows Steele an amazing dual performance where Katia is much more subdued, where Aza is definitely much more vengeful, angry, and everything, especially because in the original witch hunt, her brother was the one that is making sure that she is executed. So we have some gothic atmosphere and visuals. Bava's monochrome cinematography is absolutely stunning, creating a dark gothic mood. The practical effects, especially the transformations, are incredibly well done for the era and still make you wince with some of the brutal effects that they use here, which is kind of crazy to think about. So we have some standout performances as well. Steele is a revelation in her dual role. Richardson is actually solid as our hero here. He is portraying Dr. Andrei Gorbek, something like that. And there's a little bit of romance here. It feels a little bit rushed. I also kind of get the idea here that, she is gorgeous, so I get it. And, they're trying not to bog things down too much there. The whole cast is strong. Even the dubbing adds to the Italian cinema charm. This film truly benefits from repeated viewings. It's a masterclass in gothic horror, a must-see for Bava fans, and a classic of Italian cinema. So my rating has stayed pat here for me, is that I think I have just some slight issues here. Nothing that's actually going to truly ruin anything, but I give this one still an 8 out of 10. And then my last feature that I'll be covering here is going to be Control Freak. This is from 2025. It was written and directed by Saul Nungu. And then this is starring Kelly Marie Tran, Miles Robbins, and Kyo Chin. This is a body horror, monster, psychological, supernatural horror film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 4.5 on IMDb and a 2.4 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: a motivational speaker is tormented by an unrelenting itch on the back of her head. So it's very brief and basic and to the point, but it does work here. So if you'd like to hear a featured review on this one, I did that back on episode 281, which was Centennial Club number 19, had this paired up with Wolf Blood. Kind of made for some interesting, there's blood in both of them, but it kind of makes for a double interesting feature here about people changing in ways they're not fully expecting or wanting to. So then for here, I stumbled upon this one. We're looking for new horror to stream because I couldn't get to the theater. The poster grabbed me, came in blind, definitely wanted to give it a second watch, as you can tell here. So there's a bug connection. My buddy Evan pointed out that this is similar to William Friedkin's Bug. Actually would make a good double feature, and he's spot on. Both of them are fantastic character studies that keep you guessing about what's real and what's in the protagonist's head. And this one actually features ants, where that other one might have had people, going crazy, think there is a bug here. So then we also have an interesting little lead character deep dive. We're following Valerie Vi Wynn, who is portrayed by Tran, a highly successful motivational speaker. The film brilliantly explores her personal struggles, her career pressures, family expectations, and even the reluctance to have children. Tran does a fantastic performance in this dual role here of kind of trying to figure out, we have this one person who is a good public persona and then kind of what she's dealing with underneath that. There's some cultural and general gender layers here. Ngo, who is Asian heritage, weaves a nuanced cultural pressures and subtle sexism, adding rich layers to the story. Now, the central mystery here is that Vi develops an increasingly terrible itch, leading to the classic horror dilemma. Is it a demon or is she cracking under the pressure? The film maintains some good ambiguity, and the second watch does reveal genuine hints of the supernatural entity. There's some filmmaking standouts here. The editing is superb, especially with how it juxtaposes Vi's public persona with her private unraveling. The cinematography, shadow work, and especially the use of ants to symbolize the possession are all brilliant. The sound design for the entity's voice is also quite creepy. So this actually gets quite brutal in the third act, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. It did make me squirm in my seat. So for this one, I think it's a compelling and nuanced horror experience. It's a masterful blend of psychological exploration and the supernatural elements, anchored by a strong performance from Tran. Highly recommend for fans who love horror that dig deep into the human psyche. And also say here, I like Miles Robbins, who plays her husband in this one of Robbie. So my rating then for Control Freak, going to be a 7 out of 10, has stayed pat on that rating as well. And then I got 2 episodes here of Horror's Greatest I'm going to be covering, and the first one is episode 5 of season 1, which was Stephen King adaptations. This one, Stephen King's stories have been the basis of over a dozen horror classics and at least as many failures. What elements come together to successfully adapt King on the page to the King on the screen? And so this was a fun one to check out because King was a writer that got me into reading adult horror like many people. I found it in my high school library, and that was a starting point with the book of It. To that point, I've seen adaptations of his work like Children of the Corn, its sequels, and others that I probably didn't connect with at the time. Now, when I started to rent movies and expand my horror movie knowledge base, that's where I actually started. So the most fun person here to listen to in this is Joe Hill, being King's son. He provides some interesting insight there for sure. Of course, we have some filmmakers like Brea Grant, David Dastmalchian, Kate Siegel, Mick Garris, Tom Holland, and Axiel Carolyn, who were all influenced or appeared in films of his works. You also can't go wrong when you're listening to like Taverneau Dew and Rebecca McKendry, Dave Schilling, and Tracy Salisbury. So the different films they focus on are solid. Just hearing a little bit more about how they affected people, and they actually kind of delve into like when these came out, why they have some lasting impacts, and why some of these work and why some of these don't work. Like I know for one, Gerald's Game was one when I read growing up that I didn't know if it could ever be adapted. It was something in my head that I always kind of wanted to try, and then when somebody did it so well, it works. Mick Garris did a great job with the Stand, mini series, and I mean Carrie is one of the better horror movies of all time. Hearing kind of how remaking certain ones also kind of makes sense. It helps to frame why King is successful as he is. Then the other one I got to check out was going to be Season 2, Episode 1 of Animal Attacks. A great animal attack movie pushes all of our human against nature buttons, from demented sharks to unhinged chimps. This episode focused on the leaders of the cinematic pack, and we also have the worst horror pets who give treats to the best. So the next episode here then is Animal Attacks. This is a subgenre that I've seen more of the heavy hitters with the large versions of like Ants with Them or like Jaws and Alligator. I think it's a fun topic to explore. It also does well at giving a brief overview whether the creature involves like a bear, shark, alligator, or some other animals like an orca. It's also kind of funny because like alligator and orca and so just some other things are actually, Jaws ripoffs, and just how that one had such a cultural impact with everything. So some many, great crossover names here with people that are also interviewed. There's also some filmmakers interviewed and whatnot. I'll include here that we have like some names I haven't said is like Joe LaMattina, Alejandro Brugues, Ted Geoghegan, Heidi Honeycutt, Jen Wexler, Chelsea Rebecca, and Ryan Turek. So these cover a wide range of stuff here, like I said, and including a few that I hadn't seen. Definitely a great crash course of this subgenre with a good starting point to diving deeper. So for episode 5 of season 1, I gave that one an 8 out of 10, and this one I also gave an 8 out of 10. They do really good at kind of giving you a brief overview, also giving you some movies to check out, and if you haven't already, or if you might have, like some other ones that you might need to, kind of explore into. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
How did you cope with Kathy being gone?
I didn't. This is their new sister and brother, Oliver. Oliver lost his family just like you guys. Needed someone that could give him special care. Listen, I gotta tell you a secret. Listen. It's like a little angel. It's a beautiful angel. It does beautiful things. Listen. 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 Some people believe the spirit stays in the body for months after death. We can bring her back.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Bring Her Back, here from 2025. This is directed between Danny and Michael Filippo. And then Danny also wrote this with Bill Hinsman. I'm just making sure. Yeah, it looks like those are the two that wrote it. Now, this stars Billy Barrett, Sally Hawkins, and Sora Wong, while also featuring the likes here of Misha Haywood, Jonah Wren Phillips, Stephen Phillips, Sally Ann Upton, Catherine Adams, Brian Godfrey, Brendan Bacon, Olga Miller, Nicola Telly, Francis Sasser, Asha O'Connell, Ariane Ross, Amma Mollison, Keith Warrior, and Ryan Linton Brown. Now, this is a body supernatural horror mystery film that is from Australia. This is currently sitting on a 7.3 on IMDb and a 3.7 on Letterboxd, where a synopsis being: following the death of her father, siblings uncover terrifying secrets within the secluded home of their new foster mother. Now, this was a film that I learned about, and it went high on my must-sees for 2025. I was unable to get to the theater to see it, so I had to wait till it hit VOD. Now that it is, I made it a featured review here, as you could tell. Now, the buzz I heard was good, and I was able to avoid spoilers ahead of finally seeing it. So let's jump into doing some featured notes here, and I'll start with our directing duo, and that would be with Danny. He's directed 2 films that are out, but slated for 4 more, plus he has done a short. 3 of those that he's doing are in horror, with the upcoming Talk to Me sequel. There's also looks like a prequel and then an untitled film. And the same things are for his brother of Michael. They have the same credits. We also have 2 assistant directors here. First is James Dubé. Now, he's done this for 6 films, and I've seen 2. They are the same 2 as the Filippo brothers have, directed themselves, so those are the only 2 in horror. And the other one is Dan Gill. He's done 2 features. The other one isn't out as of yet, as it looks like he's going to do the next 47 Meters Down film. Then to the writers, first is going to be Danny once again. He's written 4 and 1 short. I've seen both, the 2 that he's directed. He's also the writer for the Talk to Me sequel and then this untitled film coming up. Then the other one is going to be Hinsman. He seems to work with Danny as the same exact features to their credit. Now, moving to the cast, let's start with Hawkins. She's been in 48 movies and 6 shorts. I've seen 7 of her films. Not in horror would be the new Wonka film. She was in Star Wars Episode 1, and she's also in Godzilla 2014, as well as its sequel, King of the Monsters. I put both of those close enough to horror. I also put Shape of Water as adjacent. Now, she does have one other official horror film. It's like Waz, like W-A-Z, or maybe it's actually W-Delta-Z. I'm not positive on that. So then this is Wong's feature film debut. I believe there's some trivia that I'll get to here later about her. Then last is going to be Barrett. This is his first film that I've seen. He's been in 12. He has one other one in the horror genre of Sharknado 5, Global Swarming. Alright then, for this movie though here, we start with seeing rituals being performed. There's a heavyset guy making a circle with like salt or something along those lines, so a white powder. Then it makes it eerie that we see someone is filming everything. This helps set up the atmosphere that we'll come back to later. So then we have Piper, portrayed by Wong, as she's at a bus stop and decides to talk to a group of girls. They're rude towards her, and it is here that we learn that she's blind. Her stepbrother is Andy, portrayed by Barrett. He shows up to take her home. Now, they are quite close. Something of note is that whenever one of them believes the other one isn't telling the truth, they'll say grapefruit. Then you have to drop the lies if you are hiding something. Now, this duel then comes to a grisly discovery. Their father has passed away in the shower. They try to do what they can to revive him, but it doesn't change the outcome. Andy is just shy of being old enough to become Piper's legal guardian. They're going to have to go into foster care until then. So then they go to Wendy, who is portrayed by Upton. Now, she's assigned their case. She tells them that she's found a placement for Piper. It appears this woman has had problem children in the past, so she won't take anybody like that if it's going to cause bigger issues. So at this time, she's not going to take Andy, because when he was a boy, he got into some trouble. He begs to at least meet her to plead his case so he can stay with Piper, because he does a lot for her and they're close. It is here that we meet this mother of Laura, portrayed by Hawkins. She previously had a daughter herself, who is Kathy, portrayed by Haywood. Now, her daughter drowned in the swimming pool that they have. It is now empty and kind of fallen into disrepair. It's kind of dirty and stuff like that. So, Kathy was also blind like Piper. From the moment we meet her, we see that Laura is a bit off. The children are intrigued by her. Andy is in a tough spot. If he rocks the boat, Laura is going to report to Wendy how he is doing, and it could jeopardize his guardianship. Laura does have a son who is Oliver, portrayed by Phillips, who is an odd boy. The more that we see his interactions with Laura, there is abuse of some sort going on here, and it kind of gets pretty heartbreaking. Laura does good things for these siblings, though. She makes sure that they get to their father's funeral. Andy and her bond over their shared trauma. As the synopsis says, she has a darker reason for the things that she does. She also is setting things to ensure that Andy doesn't get in the way of her grand plan. He is left at home with Oliver, and he even lets him out of the room that he's locked inside. This leads to disastrous things that could put her plans into jeopardy. So let's leave my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start is that ahead of seeing this, I had heard that it had good atmosphere and heavy subject matter. I knew this dealt with the trauma of losing a child, which hits me harder now that I have 2 children. There's a great scene where Laura wants Andy to open up to her, and they play this game where they have to talk openly. They actually sit back to back in chairs, and to do this so that way you don't have to look at each other while they're saying these things. So he asks her how she dealt with the loss of Kathy. She says she didn't. That was great, and it always puts him at ease. Now, since it shows that you don't necessarily have to get over it, as how a lot of people, kind of will, say about some of these things. So it helps explain why she's so quirky. There is more to it as well. So that's where I'll start then, is this dynamic between Andy and Piper. The story starts with picking up before their lives were devastated by the death of their father. There are these subtle things that are introduced as we go along, like us learning that Andy has things in his file about getting into trouble. So he's not 18 yet, so they're not sealed, but this also takes place in Australia, so I'm not sure if there are different rules there. I know in the United States, that's kind of the demarquee, the line that separates things. So there is this pressure on him not to get in trouble until then. Laura knows this and manipulates him. There is gaslighting that happens, and it made me anxious, so credit to the filmmaking. Piper is blind, so there's things that she doesn't see. That's just the way of the world. There are also things from when she was too young to know as well. These were elements that I enjoyed, as well as Wong and Barrett's performances to bring these 2 characters to life and bring them heart. Now, something interesting is that this is a follow-up film for the Filippo brothers, Danny and Michael. I thought that I'd heard somewhere that this is the one they wanted to make first, but since it was heavier, they had to do Talk to Me instead. These would go well together. Both involve rituals with communicating with the dead. Now, from the title of the film and then meeting Laura, it shouldn't come as a surprise as to what her endgame is. The ritual here is much more intense, and what it does to people involved, especially since most of the participants don't seem to be willing if given the choice. I do love how it explains this opening ritual that we see and how that kind of factors back in with everything later on, especially because they're on VHS tapes. I think then I'll shift over to the acting performances, since at the heart of this being a character study. I've already brought up our leads are dealing with trauma, grief, and loss in different ways. Hawkins plays such a monster. She's coming from a good place, though, but what she's doing to people is horrific, especially the children. I can't fault her, though, because I can't imagine what I'd do in her position. I'd hope it isn't this, but I also feel bad for Barrett's character. His performance is great, as he's such a fighter. What he goes through to protect Piper, there's also making up for sins of the past. Wong is good in her role. Credit to Phillips to what his character goes through. His role is more of a body and facial expression type thing, because he doesn't really talk until, I believe, late, or he might say a few words in the middle. Whatever he does there, though, that works. Haywood works in her minimum role. She's more of the specter haunting Laura. Other than that, Upton and the rest of the cast rounded off for what was needed. This then brings me to filmmaking for a little bit of trivia, and the effects here are great as they go brutal. There is body horror with things that Oliver does. The ritual in general is based in the subgenre as well. How this is filmed with the cinematography and framing was great. This hides the seams well. I'm sure that there is some CGI here. It worked well not to stand out, but to enhance. The last thing would be the effects that made me cringe, so, that's also another perk. I'd say the soundtrack and design worked to build the atmosphere. If I have a negative, I wasn't sure where to put it. The ending drops the ball. I actually have a little bit of trivia that I read. I go light on it because I don't want to spoil things, but from everything they built up to, I do like the redemption angle, but I also feel like they didn't know how to end it and then chose the safe route, and that's something, like I said, I'll get into here in just a second, but so the trivia is that Wong had zero experience acting professionally before she was cast. Her mom came across a casting call on Facebook looking for a visually impaired girl. Wong was born with colobomo and micropalathema. If I mispronounced those names or those words, I apologize. This has left her with limited sight. Hawkins did her own stunts in the movie. The Filippo brothers were originally attached to direct a film adaptation of Street Fighter in 2023, but exited the film to focus on this. Inspired by Psycho Biddy Horror, which I ended up looking this up. This is pretty much hagsploitation. This film was filmed over 41 days, the second feature of the Filippo brothers. And then just a little bit of spoilers here that are going to go light, and there's just two of that I wanted to do here, is that Jonah Wren Phillips, who plays Ollie, is the real-life son of Stephen Phillips, who plays Andy. Is Andy and Piper's father, so that's kind of an interesting thing that they have a little bit of family there, but they're not actually interacting in this movie. There is this creepy and gross stuff they do with a butcher's knife, and it sounds like they might not have told one character about things, and it really freaked him out, and kind of how they played it and how they did everything there was pretty kind of cool with a little bit of trivia that I read there. And then it sounds like that there was a few different endings that Michael Filippo has talked about, including one where things actually might go way darker. They decided, because of their friend passing away, that they wanted to go the route that they did here. I don't fault them. I can't hold against movie what I kind of want, because I kind of have to go with what the filmmakers want to do, but a darker ending I think would have worked better. But like I said, this redemption angle isn't a horrible thing either that they kind of work with. So then, in conclusion, this delivers on the atmospheric promise and delves into heavy subject matter with a nuanced approach to grief and trauma. Where the film shines is its character dynamics, especially between Andy and Piper. It boasts strong performances from the entire cast, especially Hawkins and Barrett. It's not one without its minor flaws. Since its somewhat underwhelming ending, the Filippo brothers showcase their talent for creating unsettling rituals and effective body horror. Ultimately, I would recommend this for those who appreciate intense psychological horror with a strong character focus, but be aware that the challenging subject matter and brutal effects may not be for everybody. So my rating here then for Bring Her Back, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. I am going to try to revisit this one for the end of the year. I probably will be able to. So that's one I'm hoping to see that how I settle with things. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section just because it is still new, and I don't necessarily think I need to do anything there outside of just literally spoiling things. So let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
Rosa, in the distasteful work of the day, I loved you madly. Dearest Rosa, charming Rosa.
He haunts my thoughts like a dreadful ghost. When I'm undressed, I feel as if he were looking through the wall at me.
I want to propose a toast to the most charming young lady in Cloisterham on the occasion of her 18th birthday. May she always be cherished as she is now. May she always be cherished, as she is now.
Sometimes a glaze comes over his eyes. He seems to wander away into a frightful sort of dream and take me with him.
Dearest Rosa. No wretched monk who ever groaned his life away in that gloomy cathedral could have been more tired of it. He could take to carving demons for relief, and did. What shall I do? Must I take to carving them out of my heart? My beloved, I give you my vengeance, my peace, my despair. If only you will give me yourself. Because I love you. I love you. I love you.
Never! Never!
Rosa. The journey's made. Rosa.
And then we're going back here to 1935 for my second featured review, as I have The Mystery of Edwin Drood. This is directed by Stuart Walker. The screenplay was written by John L. Balderston and Gladys Unger, while we're also giving credit here, the adaptation being done by Leopold Atlas and Bradley King, because this is an unfinished novel by Charles Dickens that is the basis. Now, this one stars Claude Rains, Douglas Montgomery, and Heather Angel, while also featuring the likes of David Manners, Francis L. Sullivan, Valerie Hobson, Zeffie Tilbury, Ethel Griffiths, E. Clive, Walter Kingsford, Forrester Harvey, Vetta Buckland, Elsa Buchanan, George Ernest, J.M. Kerrigan, Bunny Beatty, May Beatty, and Evelyn Beersford. So then, this is a crime, drama, horror, mystery, romance film that is from the United States. This is actually a Universal film. This is sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being. An opium-addicted choirmaster develops an obsession for a beautiful young girl and will not stop short of murder to have her. So this is one that I had trouble finding when I was compiling my list of horror films from 1935. What shocked me when it started up, that, like I said, it's a Universal film. There are lesser ones that didn't necessarily have the traction, definitely kind of seem to have fallen off, and they don't really seem to be doing a whole lot with restoring them. I could be wrong on that one. I'm assuming this probably is in one of those box sets. Other than knowing the title of the year and matching up the cast, I make sure I had the right movie. I came to this one blind. So let's do some featured notes. I'll start with our director of Walker. He's been brought up already this year for Werewolf of London. He's done 13 total films. I've seen 2 for 15%. This isn't considered horror by Letterboxd, so I've seen all of his horror output. Then to the writing room, first is Balderston, who I brought up earlier this year as well. I've seen 6 of his 21 features for 28%. Now for horror, he's done 5, and I've seen 4 for 80%. I'm just missing The Man Who Lived Again. I think this is a Boris Karloff film, so at some point, as long as it's not lost, I will get to it. Unger is the other writer for the screenplay. Now, they've had 22 features, first that I've seen. Now, King then helped with adapting the story. She's done this for 48 movies, first that I've seen. The other one here would be Atlas. He's adapted 8 works, first that I've seen. Then the original writer of Dickens, he has 185 feature-length adaptations of his work and 30 shorts. I've seen 3. The other 2 are variations of The Christmas Carol. One is 1984 version with George C. Scott, and then, of course, Scrooge. Now to the cast, first is Rains. He's been in 66 motion pictures and 9 shorts. I've seen 7. Not horror, I've seen Casablanca and Notorious, that last one there being an Alfred Hitchcock film. Officially has been in 5 in horror. I've seen The Invisible Man, The Wolf Man, and Phantom of the Opera. Actually, I realize those are Universal films. I've not seen Scrooge from 1935 as of yet, but it's on my list. I believe that's on Tubi. There's also a doc of the horror show that I haven't seen yet. This is about horror movies, of course. And then his co-star of Montgomery has been in 22 features and 2 shorts. I've seen him in 2 things. This and the other one being another film that's in horror with The Cat and the Canary from 1939. Then over to Angel. She's been in 53 films. Oddly enough, I just heard her voice in Peter Pan. She's also the titular character of Alice in Wonderland. Now, I've also seen Suspicion, another Hitchcock film, and Lifeboat, which is also by Hitchcock. Now, in horror, she has 3. I've seen The Undying Monster. I am missing The Premature Burial, which that's an Edgar Allan Poe adaptation, I believe. And then The Hound of the Baskervilles, that's the one that was from a couple years ago in like 1930-something. That is considered a lost film because it's in an archive and it has not been released outside of that since it went in. Now, I have 2 bonuses here. First is going to be Manners. I've seen 5 of his 42 credits. I've seen all of his horror output now, except 3 documentaries about Dracula. The other one is Hobson. She was also in Werewolf of London that I covered earlier this year. I have seen 4 of her 40 works. Everything she's done, I've seen in horror as well. So let's jump into this movie then here, now that I've gotten that all out of the way. We start off with A Surreal Nightmare by John Jasper is the one having this. He's Rains. Now, he's the man that is experiencing it, like I'm saying. Now, I'll be honest, I was a bit confused with this opening scene. It wasn't until he came back to this place later that it clicked to me that this is an opium den. Now, what we'll learn is that he's haunted by his feelings that he has for Rosa Budd, which she actually acknowledges this here soon after we meet her, where she kind of gets made fun of for her name. Now, she's portrayed by Angel. Now, this is complicated since his nephew, Edwin Drood, portrayed by Manners, is engaged to marry her. It is wild that we see John in church immediately after his visit to this establishment, and that's where we learn he's a choir master. Now, it is here that we start to meet some of the other important people in town. We have Rosa and Edwin do not have any chemistry. They are arranged to be married from their childhood. They don't seem to truly have feelings like that, though. Now, things get more complicated when Neville, portrayed by Montgomery, and his sister Helena, portrayed by Hobson, move to town, and their last name is Landless. Now, their parents tragically passed away. Neville has anger issues, so he's coming to live with the Reverend Minister Septimus Crisparkle, and he is portrayed by Sullivan. Now, on the siblings' journey into town, Neville met Rosa and fell in love instantly. She reciprocates these feelings. There is a pledge, though, that she has to Edwin, so Helena will attend the same school as Rosa. Now, all the while, we have John wanting her. She even tells Edwin how creeped out she feels around his uncle. He laughs it off, thinking that John is just intense and means nothing by it. But I also think it's kind of creepier is I believe he's actually a teacher of, I think he's the music teacher for this like finishing school. So there's also that dynamic. Now, there's one stormy night where Neville and Edwin make up. Now, they butted heads when the former came to town, but coming to realize why they were at ends isn't worth it anymore. The problem is that when they part ways, Edwin disappears. John accuses Neville, and from his history as well as attacking Edwin the first night in town, he is the prime suspect. There is more to that what's going on here, as Neville does everything he can to clear his name before it is too late. So I told you my recap and introduction to the characters. Where I want to start is that during the opening credits, I saw that this was a novel by Charles Dickens. Now, what I didn't realize until settling in to write my review is that it's an unfinished novel. It does appear that he passed away before it was completed. It does make me wonder how much he completed and how much this film just kind of needed to tell a complete story. So where does his end and this one truly end? Now, regardless, Dickens is an all-time great, so checking out another adaptation of his work is, something that is quite interesting, because I've read Great Expectations in college, and I really enjoyed that one, so I have not really seen any of the adaptations of it, though. Now that I've set that up, let's delve into something interesting here. I figured that Edwin would be our lead character from the title. He is important to set the stage, but he disappears at the midway point. It does become a murder mystery from there, or at least a mystery of what happened to him, with Neville trying to prove his innocence. This does a good job at setting him up as a hothead. Upon arriving into town, he has this interaction with Septimus. There is heart here as he takes him aside, tells him that his plan and his sister's was that they were going to quarrel with him and then flee into the night. Having met Rosa, he wanted to get to know her, so this caused a change of heart to reveal their plan. It also makes us as the audience start questioning things. The same for the police in the world of the film that it takes place in. It has a good touch to, develop Neville's character. Credit Montgomery here to bring in life to this role. Then we have the actual main character of John. This would reigns as the Invisible Man. He wakes up in an opium den, has a freak out while this woman who runs the place, played by Tilbury, watches him. I love the transition over to the fact that he leads the choir in the church, showing that his public persona that he shows hides this darker part of him. Now, there is something there that could be developed as to why. I could have missed it, but it isn't important. I just think it might provide some insight. There is a subtle introduction into him being creepy toward Rosa and making her uncomfortable. So I'm a fan of Rains. How he handles his character is great. And I believe by this point he would have already have been the Invisible Man. So he already was establishing that he can play these type of roles very well. Now, the last bit of the story to build would be the unrequited love and the anger that festers from it. There's a great scene that didn't click for me, and it makes sense as everything kind of falls into place. What I'll say is that John gets a tour of the cemetery and the crypts by its caretaker of Durdles, portrayed by Harvey. Now, Durdles passes out. John takes his key and continues on. How this comes back into play later was good. I don't necessarily expect it to go as bleak as it did, so credit to Universal for doing something like this. Now, what I do think makes work everything kind of comes together because of the action performances. I've already said that Rains and Montgomery are the two best. They are given more to work with as well as to develop their characters. Now, Angel is fine as a catalyst. She is engaged to Edwin. She falls for Neville, and the feeling there is mutual, and so John is obsessed with her on top of that. Now, she doesn't have much depth apart from that. Another underutilized role here would be Hobson's Helena. She's there when she came to town and does fight to prove that Neville is innocent, but outside of that, she isn't given much to work with, so that's limited. I would say that Sullivan, Tilbury, Harvey, and E. Clive headline the rest of the cast. They're solid in support. Now, all that's left for some doing trivia here would be filmmaking. I do think in general this is well made. I thought this captured this little town well. Everybody knows everybody's business. They do play some of the things for laugh when Edwin visits Rosa at the school. Her classmates keep interrupting to get trivial items. The cinematography and framing are finer than that. The technology was limited, so there is that. It's also limited in the effects that were used. I did appreciate the editing to show the surreal nightmares that John experiences. Thought that was a good touch in developing his broken psyche. The soundtrack and design were also fine for what was needed without necessarily standing out or anything like that. So then for the trivia, like I said, this is the novel The Last by Dickens, was unfinished at the time of his death in 1870. Shooting began on November 18th, 1934 and completed January of 1935 and was released on February 4th. That's such a quick turnaround. Part of the original Shock Theater package of 52 Universal titles that were released to television in 1957. The movie was lavishly produced by Universal at a time when it could least afford it. The studio was not yet aware of the failure of their most recent Dickens adaptation, Great Expectations, in 1934, but because of Carl Lamelle's financial excesses and sleep at the wheel managerial style, Universal was sinking into financial debacle. This film, like so many of Universal of the period, it was also another flop. Karloff was actually considered for the role of the opium-addicted John Jasper. This completed a 2-contract deal for Rains that he had signed following the success of The Invisible Man. The first feature I have not yet seen is The Man Who Reclaimed His Head. That was done in 1934. And then we have 3 debuts here of Ann Harrison, Iris Moore, and Lois Werner. So then in conclusion, this is a solid film that benefits greatly from strong acting performances, particularly from Rains and Montgomery. While based on an unfinished novel, the movie manages to craft a compelling and surprisingly bleak murder mystery. The well-executed cinematography and editing, especially in depicting John's disturbed psyche, further enhance the experience. Despite some minor character depth issues, this Universal production is certainly worth watching for fans of early horror and classic adaptations, especially if you're trying to do a bit deeper dive into lesser discussed titles. So my rating then for The Mystery of Edwin and Drood is going to be a 7 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily need to do anything extra there, so let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
The truth is out there. Follow us.
We interrupt this program for a special report by WKMU.
We will return you to your scheduled programming shortly. Can't sleep? Neither can we. And who are we? Well, I'm Sky, and she's Blue. And dial in as we explore everything from the 1,200-year-old structure, Göbekli Tepe, to UFOs, conspiracy theories, and bizarre stories from around the globe. Tune in at wkmu.podbean.com. That's wkmu.podbean.com.
This concludes our broadcast day.
And I have a great offer here that I wanted to go ahead and extend to all you listeners out there for oldglory.com. This is a place where you can get over 300,000 items for music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture fans, featuring officially licensed merch from iconic bands and top sports teams. Discover your perfect fan gear and save with my exclusive discount. And that is going to be Cinephile 1. But here you get a 15% discount off of any product, and this is exclusive for something that I'm doing and for what has been offered to me. And I mean, this has things like artists here, Bob Marley, the Beatles, Grateful Dead, the Rolling Stones, Metallica, and more. We also have sports fans have stuff here for your favorite teams with official gear from the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, and NCAA, showcasing your team pride in style. And they even have some stuff here that celebrate, entertainment, TV shows, movies, lifestyle brands, and it means some quirky gifts to fan favorite apparel. There's something for everybody. With free standard shipping and same-day order processing, Old Glory delivers fast and reliable service with every purchase. Whether shopping for yourself or looking for a perfect gift, Old Glory is your one-stop shop for iconic, high-quality merch that reflects your love for music and sports, as well as like pop culture. And I mean, kind of just running through some of this stuff. This is a family-owned superstore since 1969. They're known for their quality and customer service. You can get exclusive selection of graphic tees, hoodies, hats, and accessories. Represent your favorite sports team with official fan gear. Discover quirky gifts, like I was saying, and fun pop culture apparel. Perfect place to shop for, this type of stuff. And there's a vast selection of entertainment-themed products, including movies and TV shows if you're not necessarily into some of the other things. And enjoy reliable and fast service with Old Glory's commitment to customer satisfaction, the ultimate source for high-quality, licensed fan merchandise for all ages. Like I said, my promo code is going to be Cinephile1, all one word. So if you're kind of interested, go ahead and check out their website here in my show notes, as I'll have I actually have more details down there for you as well. And welcome back one last time here, and just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff, if you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mich. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm DavidOSU87. On Threads, I'm DavidOSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on, whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram, I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way, it's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. And for the next episode, as I inch closer and closer to episode 300, is I'm going to be doing another of my Voyage to the Fives. I think this actually makes this to be episode number 14 of doing these, and the 2 feature reviews. So I know I'm going to be doing Eternal Mass. This is from 1935. I have picked this up on a bootleg DVD so I could check it out. I believe it has subtitles and everything. As of right now, Until Dawn is going to be the 2025 release. That's the most popular one that I have access to. I'm going to try to see if I can go check out 28 years later. I need to make sure to see where it's still showing around me and kind of configure from there. But then I'll also be watching Castle Freak. That's going to be my Voyage to the Fives 1995 rewatch. And then The Rule of Jenny Penn is going to be the 2025 film that I revisit. And I'm also going to get to the chance to go to Wexner Center to check out Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, as well as Baby Blood. This is a double feature they're showing here of international horror. And then I'll be knocking out more of those screeners for you as well. So I don't think there's anything else I need to say here for this outro, except that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending